So now I'm done cutting out my pattern, my fabrics. I transferred it to my fabric. So this is what I have. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to weave the sides. Alright, then I cut out the pockets. So this is our pocket, is 2 places, 1 for each side. Alright, so how many inches I used? This is in a block form. I used 14 inches. From here to here is 14 inches. From here to here is 14. The same thing, the width is also 14 inches. So I have 14 inches. So I'll weave it, then continue. Alright? Yeah. Alright, so the next thing now, I'm done weaving the edges of my shorts and my pockets to give it a nice finishing. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do now is, this is my pocket. I place it, this is the wrong side, so that's where I placed it. Then I'm going to mark 7 inches. So from this side, I'm going to mark 7 inches down. Then I'm going to notch it a little. Alright. Then I'm going to bring my front piece, one side of my front piece. I'm going to place my tape at the tip. Mark my 7 inches. And also notch it a little. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to place the front on top of the pocket this way. I'm using a pin to hold it together. Alright, when I'm done this way, I'm going to make sure that the two sides are, all the sides are aligning together. So what next am I going to do? I'm going to flip it in this way. I don't know if you can see it properly. So this is it. I flipped it in gently this way. Alright. This way. Then I'm going to use this pin, remove it to secure it again this way. This way. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to run a stitch. I'm going to top stitch this upper piece here. I'm going to run a stitch on it. Alright, so after running, so now I'm done top stitching on the side, so I'll remove my pins. I did the same thing to the other side of the shirt, so I'll remove the pin. This is what the inside looks like. Alright, so what next should we do? This is what you're going to do. You open it up this way. Alright, so now you flip it up, then place it this way on top. You can decide to sew it. You can decide to use your pin to hold it for the meantime until you join it to your back. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm using a pin to hold it together. Alright, so now my pocket is ready. The next thing I'm going to be talking on is the flies part of it. Alright, so stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. So I'm still doing the same thing for this part of the shirt. So now I'm going to hold it. Lest I forget, there is another thing we are here to do. So don't be in a hurry. Before securing to this one. So now we need to close. This is, if you just place it this way, it's fine. But this still has an opening. Alright, and we want the stitches to be inside. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to flip it up like this and close it up. Alright, so I'm going to close it up. then show you what next I did to it. So now I'm done joining it, like stitching the bottom part, so I'm going to flip it up this way. And this is what I'm going to be having. This is what the inside looks like, the view, inside the view of the short. This is what it looks like, all right? And this is what the outer part looks like. So what next am I going to do now? This is, I'm also going to do the same thing to this piece. I'm going to fold it out. So this is what it looks like. So the next thing I will be working on is the fly. All right, this part of it. Yeah. So now I just placed the three of my pieces together, my front piece together, then the pattern on top of it. So now I'm going to mark where my crotch line is. That's the fly. So I'm just going to hold it this way. Mark the lines. Alright, so this is what I have. So what next am I going to do? I'm going to come down by 7 inches from my waist point. So this is where my 7 inches is. Then I'm going to run a stitch and close it up. From this way, I'm going to run a stitch and close it up. Alright, so let me do that quickly. Now this is the stitch I made from where my 7 inches stopped down to this end point. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to notch it a little. Alright, so it will lap very well, which I did here. Then I'm going to open it up. So this is what I have. Okay, so this side, the right side is going to be left. This right side of the short is going to be the one that is going to cover the crotch area. Like it's going to be the one that is going to have that shape. All right, so now what am I going to do? This is my zip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it here. And I'm going to run a stitch on it, then notch it here. So let me secure it to the pin first. So I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch on it, after which I'll now run a stitch for these other parts of it. Okay, so now this part is going to be here this way. All right, we can decide to top stitch on it instead of joining it through this way. You can decide to run a stitch on top of it, which is fine, which is okay. Then this other part that is going to cover with, what you're going to do is you're going to make use of the center point of it. You're not going to start from this end, you're going to start from here. You're going to make use of the center point of it. All right, so this is the center. That's where you're going to place your zipper. That will be after you are done with the first one, after stitching the first one. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch on the first one first. So now I'm done stitching on it. This is the side that is going to cover the crotch. So this is it, the center point. That's where I stitched on it. So the next thing to do now is to top stitch on it. So I'll kindly close this back, then place it this way. So we can decide to use a chalk to mark it. So I'm going to run a stitch on top of it now. Alright, so I'm going to top stitch on it to give me this better view. So this is what I'm going to do. Alright, so when I'm done stitching or top stitching on it, this is what I will have. This is what it looks like. Okay, so you can open it up this way. So now the next thing we are going to be doing is to join the back piece of our trouser. So now let's place the two pins this way. So now this is what I'm going to do to this piece. This is my back. I've done my darts, both the front and the back. Alright, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch the sides. Then if I'm done stitching the side, I will stitch this area. Alright, so let's get into it. So I'm done stitching the sides. Alright, the next thing I'm going to stitch is the center points. Now please kindly ensure that the center to center aligns together. Alright, so you now stitch on it. Okay, so that's how I was doing. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure around the waist. And I used cut out a band. Alright, so this is my band. This is what it looks like. I used the paper stay or paper gum to give it a little bit of stiffness. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is now I'm going to attach it to my band. So how do I do it? I'm going to start from this right side of the short. Then before then, I'm going to run a stitch and close this up. Also do the same thing here and close it up. Then I'm going to attach it to this point. Alright. Now I'm done stitching on the first one and I flipped it up out like this. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a stitch on top of this. Alright, so I'm going to stitch on it and the short is ready. Alright, so this is what we'll be having. We're almost done. Then after which we'll give it a very good ironing. My shirt is ready. I'm done with it. The next thing I'm going to mark is where I'm going to place my button. Alright, so now my button is going to be here and my button hole will be here. So I'll attach a button hole here, then I'll attach my button here. Our shirt is ready.